Now, if over the break or through the summer you've been starting to think about retirement living for yourself or maybe for a loved one, but between the management fees, the exit fees, downsizer contribution changes, not only is your head spinning, but maybe you're feeling frightened by the finance side, so much so that you might be even putting it off. So shall we do this together? Coming up this hour in On the Money, Rachel Leong from Aged Care Gurus will join you to answer all those nitty-gritty, uncomfortable questions that you have about finances for retirement living. So get your questions ready, 1300 222 774. She holds a Master's in Financial Planning, but most importantly, Rachel specialises in retirement and aged care finances. So get those questions ready, 1300 222 774. That's all coming up in the next half an hour.
On the Money.
Here we are. We haven't gone away. It's time for On the Money. Remo and Kate are taking a break, so we've decided to drill down into retirement living. You may be thinking about this for yourself or maybe for a loved one, but between management fees, exit fees and things that you are frightened of, it can be a little tricky. So we've invited Rachel Leong back. She's from Aged Care Gurus. We can take your questions on 1300 774 774. Sorry, I'll get this right. 1300 222 774 or text 0437 774 774. Hello, Rachel.
Hello.
I'm just making up numbers as we go along, but you can't make up numbers because you are a financial planner, and we are going to talk about the elephant in the room, exit fees.
Yeah, definitely the biggest cause of confusion when it comes to people downsizing into a retirement community.
What's scary? People think they're going to be socked with a massive exit fee that's going to put all of their plans out. So what's so scary about them?
I guess the thing that's scary about them is that they're different from one community to another, and you can even have different exit fee options within a village itself. And there's lots of different components to it. So the deferred management fee is typically the biggest component, and that's normally a percentage of either the purchase price, so you know exactly how much it's going to be, or it's a percentage of the future sale price, which means you've got to kind of estimate what that's going to be. And then there can be other components like sharing in capital gain and capital loss, refurbishment or renovation costs, sales commissions, marketing fees, and then there's a really important element that sits around it as well, which is called a guaranteed buyback. So the state-based legislation will put a minimum time frame. So they'll say, for example, you know, the buyback needs to occur within X amount of time, but sometimes the retirement village operators choose to do it inside that time frame. So the legislation might say you need a buyback after 18 months, or you can only get a buyback if you're moving into aged care. Whereas the operator might say, well, no, actually, if you choose this particular contract option, we'll give you a guaranteed buyback of, you know, the shortest buyback I know of in the industry is 3 months. So, you know, there's lots of different moving parts to it in terms of how much money are you going to get back and how soon after you leave.
If we are looking at exit fees and we're trying to figure out what's fair, what are the main questions that we should ask?
Yeah, so the first thing to know is that the exit fee exists for two reasons. So the exit fee exists so that the retirement village can keep your upfront purchase price artificially low. So that's one part of the exit fee, is to account for what you haven't paid upfront. The other reason the exit fee exists is because the legislation stops the operators from profiting from your ongoing weekly or monthly village charge. So the exit fee is there to essentially give them some profit at the end, but you don't have to pay an exit fee, and more retirement village operators are giving payment options. So it might suit you to pay an exit fee because you might want to pay the cheapest price up front because you want to net a certain amount from the sale of your home because you want to spend it or you want to invest it or whatever it is. But for other people, they don't necessarily want that because that can have really serious pension consequences. Once your assets go over the pension asset threshold, you lose pension at $7,800 a year per $100,000 of assets. So there's payment options out there that enable you to pay, if you like, the exit fee up front the operator gives you a discount. So instead of paying, 30% later, you might pay 20% now. So bingo, discount. And then you might also get more pension from that option. So, there's lots to think about.
We're speaking with Rachel Lane from Aged Care Gurus. If you have a question about retirement living finances, 1300 222 774, 1300 222 774, or you can text your question through on 0437 774 774. When you mentioned deferred management fees, what are any tips or tricks to do with those?
So the number one trick is don't try and compare one village with another village based on percentage. So sometimes people look at they try to use a rule of thumb to make sense of a transaction that they've never encountered before. So they see a deferred management fee in one village and it's 35%. And they see a deferred management fee in another village and they go, well, that's 25%. So they think, well, 25% is better, or 25% is cheaper, or 25% is more affordable than 35%. I should go for that option.
And isn't it?
Well, it's a yeah, but nah, right? So it's 35% of what compared to 25% of what? And then what are all of the other implications, i.e. are you sharing in capital gain and capital loss? Do you have to renovate your unit or house when you vacate? Are you going to have selling fees and marketing fees? Are you going to get a guaranteed buyback? What's the length of time on that? You can't just, I get why people do it. They want to simplify something that is quite complex, but you really do need to crunch the numbers and work it out, not just on that exit fee, and that's what everyone gets attracted to, but look at, it's what I call the ingoing, the ongoing and the outgoing. So separate the transaction, and you can do it on a piece of paper and just divide it into thirds and write ingoing, ongoing, outgoing. And if you're comparing two different villages, for example, you can draw a line down the middle of that, and then you can look at them side by side, because the odds are they haven't got the same purchase price, they haven't got the same ongoing cost, they won't have the same implications for your pension, your rent assistance, and then the exit fees will be different. So you are trying to compare an apple and an orange.
Okay, so we've got three headings here: ingoing, ongoing and outgoing. Mm-hmm. Can you please share what are the main things going under each of those headings?
Okay, so one of the reasons, or one of the, I guess, causes for concern for people downsizing to a retirement community is that they're frightened of stamp duty. So the first thing to know is that generally speaking, stamp duty doesn't apply. Unlike if you're buying into a strata title, residential development. If it's a strata title village, you will pay stamp duty, but as a general rule, retirement villages operate on leasehold or licence arrangements, and land lease communities, you buy your home, but you lease the land on which it sits. So in that ingoing box, you don't necessarily have to put stamp duty if it's one of those kind of, in inverted commas, common arrangements. It's only if it's not a common, or if you're trying to compare with strata. In the ongoing, you need to put the ongoing village costs, plus have a little budget of your personal expenses. And they might be quite different to what they are living at home. So, rates can be a lot cheaper and you might not pay rates. They might be included in the weekly or monthly charge. Your utility bills might be a lot cheaper because you're living in an energy efficient home. So it's all about making sure that you know what you're going to pay exactly, when, ingoing, ongoing, outgoing.
Got a question here. I have a relative who is in her third aged care facility. She's moved as her dementia has progressed. I truly don't understand the enormous fees. Do they get some money back when they leave to go to another facility? That's a text through on 0437 774 774. Rachel?
Okay, so what we've been talking about up until now is retirement villages and land lease communities, which kind of go under the umbrella of retirement communities. In aged care, it's different. It's means tested. So you can contribute towards your cost of accommodation through what's known as a refundable accommodation deposit. And just like it sounds, it's refundable. You can choose to have some or all of your fees deducted from that refundable accommodation deposit. You need to agree with the operator around that. So it really depends. But as a general rule, the RAD, as it's called, is refunded. It's refunded very quickly to either the person who's left the aged care facility or to their estate. And in fact, if they don't refund within a certain time frame, generally speaking 14 days, they have to pay you interest on the money that they're holding.
Will you stay with us, Rachel Lane, and we'll continue to take your text message questions, 0437 774 774, or you can call us 1300 222 774. We're talking retirement living and aged care finances. Get your questions ready.
On the money.
Continuing the conversation with Rachel Lane from Aged Care Gurus. Hello again, Rachel.
Hi.
We have a question here from Jan from Tacoma. Jan, what's your question for Rachel?
I've just been wondering, can you actually go into a retirement village and just pay full fee for it, and then when you sell it eventually, you get the same, whatever you can sell the property for, exactly the same as buying a house without exit fees and all the other things?
Good question, Jan. Rachel?
You can certainly find retirement villages that will give you an option of no exit fee, and that's becoming more and more common. And the great thing about that particular option is that you can then compare it to paying a deferred management fee, and so you can see what it's really costing you to not pay the real price up front. If you're talking about moving into something that's strata title, generally speaking, there will still be an exit fee. That's kind of a bit of an urban myth that if I move into a strata title retirement village, I'm not going to pay an exit.
What do you mean by strata title?
So where you have title to the home or the apartment within the village. The other thing to look out for, and this is where I always say, Jan, you've got to break your contract. So it's not about saying that one contract's right or one contract's wrong or one contract's better. It's really about breaking your contract down into what are my costs, what are my rights, and what are my responsibilities? Because a lot of people get attracted to strata because they have that sense of ownership. But you need to think about what are your responsibilities then. For example, you'll be responsible, like in any other strata or owner's corporation, for special levies. So if something was to go wrong, building defects or whatever it might be, they can levy, or they would have to levy the residents because you don't have a big corporation who are owning it and running it and managing all of that. So it's just, like I said, it's not about right or wrong. It's just about looking at it and saying, okay, what do I want? And likewise, when we were talking before about the guaranteed buybacks, general rule, you're not going to get a guaranteed buyback with strata because you own it. The other thing to think about is with strata, you would normally get any capital gain or capital loss. And capital loss, I think we've now in the last couple of years come to realise, does exist in property. But the other thing is that you would need to pay your ongoing fees until your home's sold, whereas a lot of retirement villages, you only have to pay the ongoing fees for a certain amount of time after you leave. So that's why I say just break it down into those rights, responsibilities and costs and just weigh it up and work out which contract suits you.
Jan?
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan. Jan calling through on 1300 222 774. Rachel, we have a question about exit fees on 0437 774 774. Does the term exit fee refer to the following? Number 1, moving to another premises. Number 2, moving to higher care. Or number 3, death? Thanks.
Well, potentially all three. It relates to exiting the village. Now, some villages will give you the option, particularly if they're a big organisation, they might have retirement villages across the state or even across the country. They will let you kind of transport your ownership from one village to another. So let's say you're living in Melbourne and you've paid 20% of your 30%, that's how much of your exit fee has accrued. They will let you sell that unit and only pay 10% exit fee when you move to their retirement village in Queensland, for example. But typically an exit fee occurs whenever you leave for whatever reason you're leaving.
Thank you. Another text here, 0437 774 774, or you can call 1300 222 774 with a question about crunching the numbers on retirement living. Hi, Lisa and Rachel. My mum is in aged care. Her RAD, what was the RAD again?
Refundable accommodation deposit.
Refundable accommodation deposit is approximately $350,000. She's about to come into an inheritance of approximately $150,000. Mm-hmm. Would it be best to pay that amount off her RAD? Asks Linda from Yakadanda.
All right, so let me preface my answer with you need to get financial advice. That being said, some of the things to think about are, and I'm not sure when your mum moved into aged care, but the current interest rate on an unpaid refundable accommodation deposit is about 7%. So if you've got that money in the bank and you're earning 2, but you're paying 7, that possibly doesn't make a lot of sense. The other benefit of putting the money into the RAD is that it's an exempt asset for calculating your age pension. It is an assessable asset for aged care, so it will be counted towards any means-tested care fee, but so would the money in the bank. So there's a few. The other thing to think about is any estate planning wishes that might be affected. So money that goes into the RAD, no matter where it comes from, and a lot of kids kind of pass the hat around to get the money together to pay mum or dad's RAD. Any money that goes into the RAD goes back to the resident or the resident's estate. So if you are doing that where you're putting the hat around or where you're moving assets that would be treated differently, you need to think about that.
Another one on the RADs. Could you please explain what expenses are allowed to be deducted from a RAD when a person moves out or dies? Thanks. And that was a text through 0437 774 774. Rachel Lane.
Okay, so you've got the right to deduct your DAP, which is your daily accommodation, which is, there's only...
I'm trying to write all these down.
So the daily accommodation payment is the interest on any RAD that you don't pay. So every resident has the choice on how they pay for their accommodation. They can pay by a RAD, which is a lump sum. They can pay by a DAP, which is a daily payment, or they can pay by any combination of the two, including the option to have any amount of daily payment deducted from their lump sum. Beyond that, if you want to deduct other fees like your additional service fee, if you're getting extras like, Foxtel, wine with meals, all of those sorts of things, you can negotiate that with the aged care provider. Sometimes you can negotiate with them that any means-tested care fee is deducted. Sometimes you can negotiate with them that all of your fees are deducted from your RAD, because a lot of people think because aged care is means-tested, that means it's affordable, whereas in reality, it is likely going to cost you more than what your cash flow can fund.
We're speaking with Rachel Lane. She's from Aged Care Gurus, taking your calls on 1300 222 774. Denise has called in from Rosebud. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning.
What's your question?
Sorry.
That's okay.
I've just lost my voice as I went to speak. My question is, my husband and I, a few years ago, about 10 years ago now, bought a house for our son who's on an aged pension, and kept it in our name or in my name actually. We just put it in my name to make sure that he wasn't sort of wouldn't have it taken off him by someone else. He's very gullible, but he's a gorgeous person. He has Asperger's. He's on the autism spectrum. Very high functioning, and
but the house is in your name, Denise. So this is going to
name.
affect things, isn't it?
That's right. And when I heard you say the 7,800, that means that I'm on a very small part pension now, as my husband is slowly dying in aged care. And when he passes, that will be all my responsibility. And the house is very primitive. You couldn't sell it if you wanted to. It's not in a good position in town in Shepparton. So I'm really stressed about the whole thing.
Oh, Denise. Rachel, what is your, advice there? And we give general advice here on ABC Radio Melbourne and Victoria to Denise or someone in that situation where you've got a house against your name. Thanks, Denise, for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Denise. And I'm sorry to hear about those circumstances. I would definitely be making an appointment to have a chat to Centrelink and just explain to them that the assessment of that house is causing you some financial hardship. There's rules under which if a house is either unreasonable to sell or unrealisable, that you can apply for financial hardship to have the asset exempt. So I would definitely be going and having a chat to them about that.
Thank you for your call again, Denise from Rosebud. And John from Shepparton has called through on 1300 222 774. G'day, John.
How are you?
Good. What's your question?
I just want to know, is there any minimum or any maximum amount of exit fees that villages can charge you? I find that it's 60. The average exit fee is 60,000, but the more you sell your house for, the more you pay, and in some cases you're getting less back than what you actually bought the house for in the first place.
Rachel?
Yeah, so exit fees can be anything between 0 and 100%. And when I say that, Lisa's giving me the wide-eyed look that most people give me, which is, are you serious? So even the retirement village that my grandma moved to, the exit fee was 100%. But this is where you've got to keep it in perspective. 100% of what? So when they're charging 100%, and generally the 100% exit fees are in the church, charity and not-for-profit sector, they're charging 100% because they're keeping that purchase price incredibly low. Sometimes the purchase price might be $50,000 or $60,000. So, and yet the true value, if they were to sell it with an exit fee of 30%, they could sell that unit for $350,000. So they're doing it deliberately to make it affordable to people who can't afford the $350,000. So the answer, John, is anything between 0 and 100% is possible, and it's really, you're doing the right thing by crunching the numbers and working out what does this mean in dollar terms. Don't be frightened by an exit fee of 100%, and don't think that, you know, it's money all the way to the bank by taking one that's 0%. You've got to work out what does it mean in dollar terms, and more importantly, what does it mean for you in terms of your age pension, your rent assistance, whether or not, if you're going to get a home care package, whether or not it's going to impact on that home care package. Make sure you crunch all the numbers.
Thank you so much for your call, John from Shepparton there. Another text here on 0437 774 774. If you're a single age pensioner, if you move in with a family instead of an aged care facility, how does this affect your pension as a homeowner? How do you work out assets test, e.g. house? How much money in your bank accounts, and if rent out the house? Thanks, Dan. Oh, this is a quagmire. Yeah. Now, let's all acknowledge that this is mind-boggling. I'm writing down as many notes as I can, but we're all finding this confusing, and that's why Rachel Lane is here. So, Rachel, we're now getting into another murky area. Yeah. One of, it's like the granny flat.
It is, absolutely. It's you may find, and this is the thing. So this is not uncommon. This, you know, my grandma went through this transition. This was her kind of life goal, to live with family and be looked after by family, and it's not uncommon in certain cultures that there is that expectation, particularly on the eldest daughter. So whether you know it or not, from a Centrelink perspective, you may be establishing what's known as a granny flat right. They are very complicated. Sometimes people think they don't need a contract because they're living with family. Sometimes kids think things like, well, this is fantastic. I've got a live-in babysitter. I've got my Saturday nights back. Let's book the restaurants. Sometimes mum or dad or both think, well, this is fantastic. I never have to move into a nursing home. My kids are going to look after me forever and ever. Amen. And sometimes those two things collide, where those expectations can't be met. So it's really important to ask yourself questions like, what happens if the kids want to go on holidays? What happens if the kids get divorced? What happens if mum or dad or both's health deteriorates and you can't provide the level of care and support that they need? You know, is there a residual value to this? It's so important. No one really wants to have those conversations, but it's so important to have those conversations up front, because the only time anyone's reaching for the bottom drawer for the contract is when things aren't going so well.
And one text here, I was very surprised placing my father into aged care without him having any funds or assets. It's important people know the aged care sector can help if your family member doesn't have assets. Majority of pension goes to his care. It's comforting knowing that it's available. Rachel, any last words here? And we'd love to have you back on the show as well, because obviously we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, look, and that text message is so spot on. It is so important. Sometimes people think that aged care is just for the rich, or retirement villages are just for wealthy people. It's really important to look at your options. There are some really affordable options across both of those sectors. But I guess, you know, ask questions would be my number one tip. Don't feel like it's a silly question. Just ask questions until you've got an answer to every question you've got, because the most common regret I hear of people moving into a retirement community is they wish they did it sooner. And when you ask them, well, why didn't you? They were confused. So ask questions.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. So just
Why?
get an answer to all of your questions and make that move with confidence.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Rachel Lane there, and she was talking about crunching the numbers on retirement living.